The iron collar had rubbed her neck raw for 3 years, but Karga barely felt the pain anymore as she stood on the auction platform under the merciless afternoon sun. She kept her eyes down, her shoulders hunched despite her natural orc strength, knowing that any hint of defiance would earn her another beating before the day ended. The market square of Thornhill buzzed with activity around her farmers hawking vegetables, blacksmiths displaying tools, children running between stalls, but none of that mattered when Master Hendrik decided it was time to remind everyone what happened to orcs who dared to exist in human lands. "See here, good people," Hendrik bellowed, yanking the chain attached to her collar so hard that Karga stumbled forward. "Strong as an ox, this one. Can plow a field in half the time of any man, and she doesn't talk back much anymore, do you, Greenskin?" Karga said nothing. She had learned that lesson thoroughly. Her green skin was marked with scars from various punishments, some old and faded, others relatively fresh. Her small tusks, which she might have once taken pride in, now seemed like another mark against her in this world that saw her kind as nothing more than beasts of burden or targets for violence. Her pointed ears picked up every whispered insult from the crowd, every comment about how orcs should be driven back beyond the mountains, how they didn't belong here. "I'll start the bidding at 50 silver, Hendrik announced. "She's worth twice that for the work she can do." The crowd murmured, but no hands went up. Karga had been through this before. Hendrik would parade her around, use her as an example of his wealth and power, and then take her back to his farm where the real work awaited. She was property, nothing more, and everyone here knew it. Then a voice cut through the square, calm but carrying an edge of steel. "I'll give you 60 silver if you take that collar off her right now." Every head turned toward the speaker. Karga risked a glance up and saw a man pushing through the crowd. He was tall, with sun-darkened skin and the kind of lean, muscular build that came from years of honest farm work. His brown hair was slightly too long, curling at his collar, and his jaw was set in a way that suggested he didn't make idle statements. He wore simple clothes, a linen shirt, worn trousers, sturdy boots, but he moved with a confidence that made people step aside. Hendrik's face twisted into a sneer. "Simon Stenwick, didn't expect to see you at market today. Thought you'd be too busy trying to make that sad excuse for a farm profitable." 60 silver, Simon repeated, ignoring the jab. "Take the collar off and she's free. That's my offer." "Free?" Hendrik laughed, and several people in the crowd joined him nervously. "Boy, you've been out in the sun too long. This is an orc. You don't free an orc. You work it until it drops, then you get another one." Simon reached the platform and pulled a leather pouch from his belt. He held it up so the coins inside clinked audibly. 60 silver. More than you'll get from anyone else here. But the collar comes off now in front of everyone, and you sign a document saying you release all claim to her. Karga's heart hammered against her ribs. This had to be some kind of trick. No human did this. No human cared. She had been captured during a raid on her clan 3 years ago, when she was just 18 and foolish enough to think she could protect her younger siblings. She had failed then, been dragged away in chains while her clan's camp burned. Since then, she had been sold twice before ending up with Hendrik, and every master had been worse than the last. Humans didn't show mercy to orcs. They couldn't. It went against everything their society believed. "You're serious," Hendrik said slowly, his eyes narrowing. "You want to buy an orc just to set it free? What are you, some kind of bleeding heart who thinks these monsters deserve kindness?" "What I do with my coin is my business," Simon said evenly. "Do we have a deal or not?" "Because I'm sure the magistrate would be very interested to hear about those taxes you've been collecting from travelers on the North Road, the ones that aren't exactly legal. The color drained from Hendrik's face, then returned as an angry flush. "You threatening me, boy? I'm offering you 60 silver for something you were starting at 50. That's good business. The rest is just conversation." Simon's voice never rose, but something in his eyes made Hendrik take a step back. The crowd had gone silent. Karga could feel dozens of eyes on her, on Simon, on this confrontation that shouldn't be happening. The town magistrate pushed his way forward, an older man with a graying beard and shrewd eyes. "What's all this, then?" he asked. "This man wants to buy my property just to free it," Hendrik spat. "It's unnatural, it's wrong." The magistrate looked at Simon. "That true, Stenwick? I'm offering fair price for property," Simon said carefully. "What happens after the sale is concluded is my affair." The magistrate stroked his beard. "Law doesn't prevent a man from freeing property he's purchased. Foolish, maybe, but not illegal. Hendrik, you want to make the sale or not? Because I'm curious about these road taxes myself now." Hendrik's jaw worked silently for a moment. Then he snatched the pouch from Simon's hand and counted the coins with shaking fingers. "Fine, fine. You want the orc, take her. You'll regret it. They're all violent, all treacherous. It'll gut you in your sleep." "I'll take my chances," Simon said dryly. He turned to the magistrate. "I'll need that document, full release of all claims." "I'll have my clerk draw it up," the magistrate agreed, looking bemused. "This is the strangest market day I've seen in 20 years. While they waited, Simon climbed onto the platform. Karga tensed, waiting for the blow or the cruel grab, but he just stood there looking at the collar around her neck with an expression she couldn't quite read. Anger, maybe, or disgust at what he'd just purchased. "Does it hurt?" he asked quietly. The question was so unexpected that Karga actually looked up at him. His eyes were gray, she noticed, like storm clouds. "What? The collar, does it hurt?" Yes, but I am used to it." Her voice came out rougher than she intended. She hadn't spoken more than a few words in weeks. He nodded slowly. "We'll fix that soon." The clerk arrived with the document and Hendrik signed it with angry, jerky movements. Simon read it over carefully, then nodded. "Good enough." "Now what?" Hendrik demanded. "You going to make a speech about orc rights, try to start some kind of movement?" "No," Simon said. He reached into his shirt and pulled out a small leather tool kit. From it, he produced a sturdy set of metal cutters. "I'm just going to do what I said I'd do." He moved toward Karga and she flinched instinctively. The cutters looked like they could do serious damage if used as a weapon. But Simon just positioned them carefully on the collar's locking mechanism and began to work. The metal resisted for a moment, then gave way with a sharp crack that seemed to echo across the suddenly silent market square. The collar fell away. Karga's hands flew to her neck, feeling the raw, abraded skin that had been hidden beneath the iron. For 3 years that weight had been constant, a reminder every moment of every day that she was not her own person. And now it was just gone. "There," Simon said softly. He held up the broken collar for the crowd to see. "Paid for fair and square, property freed, all legal according to the laws of this territory." "You're mad," someone in the crowd muttered. "It'll kill someone," another voice added. Simon turned to face them and his voice carried clearly. "Her name is Karga. She's a person, not in it, and she's free to go wherever she wants." Then he looked at Karga directly. "You don't owe me anything. You can walk away right now and I won't follow or try to stop you. But if you want work, paid work, with fair wages and decent treatment, my farm is 2 miles west of here. The offer stands if you want it. If not, I wish you well." He stepped off the platform and started walking through the crowd, which parted for him like water. Karga stood frozen, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. Free. She was free. She could run, could try to find her way back to the mountains, to whatever remained of her clan. But 3 years had passed. They might have moved on. They might not welcome back someone who had been enslaved by humans. And winter was coming. She had no supplies, no weapons, nothing but the ragged clothes on her back. She looked at the crowd, saw the hostile faces, the disgust, the fear. Then she looked at Simon's retreating back and made a decision that surprised her as much as anyone else. "Wait," she called out, her voice cracking slightly. I will come with you, for now." Simon stopped and turned. His expression didn't change much, but something in his eyes softened slightly. "All right then. Come on. It's a bit of a walk." Karga climbed down from the platform on shaking legs and followed him. Behind them, the market erupted in whispers and speculation, but Simon ignored it all. He set a steady pace out of town, not so fast that Karga couldn't keep up, but purposeful enough that people got the message that he wasn't interested in discussing his decision. They walked in silence for about 20 minutes before Simon finally spoke. "There's a stream up ahead. We can stop there if you want to wash your neck, get a drink." "Why did you do that?" Karga blurted out. The question had been building in her since the moment he'd broken the collar. Simon was quiet for a moment, his boots crunching on the dirt road. "My father was a soldier," he finally said. "Fought in the border wars about 15 years back. Came home with a lot of stories, most of them about the terrible things orcs did. Raised me to hate your kind, to see you as monsters." Karga's heart sank. Of course, this was all leading to some twisted justification. "Then he died when I was 17, Simon continued. "Farming accident. And after he was gone, after the grief settled a bit, I started thinking about all those stories. And I realized something. In every single one of them, the orcs were always attacking, always invading. But he never once mentioned why, never talked about what we humans might have done first, never acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, there were two sides to that war." He paused to hold a branch aside so Karga could pass. "I started reading. History books, military reports, anything I could find. And you know what I learned? Humans started that war. We pushed into orc territory, claimed lands that weren't ours, killed people who were just defending their homes. And then we acted surprised and outraged when you fought back. The stream came into view, clear water running over smooth stones." Simon gestured to it. "Anyway, point is, I realized my father raised me on lies, not intentional ones maybe. He believed what he'd been told, but lies nonetheless. And I decided I wasn't going to live that way." Karga knelt by the stream and cupped water in her hands, drinking deeply. It was cool and sweet, the best thing she'd tasted in days. Then she carefully washed her neck, hissing as the water stung the raw skin. "I have salve back at the farm," Simon said. "It'll help with the healing." "You did not have to spend 60 silver on me," Karga said quietly. "You could have just walked away." "Could have," Simon agreed. "Didn't want to. I've been watching Hendrik abuse you for 2 months every market day. I've been saving up, trying to figure out how to do this without making things worse for you. Today seemed like the right time." 2 months. Karga looked at him with new eyes. "You have been planning this for 2 months, give or take." He offered a slight, self-deprecating smile. "I'm not rich. 60 silver is most of what I've saved in a year, but some things are worth more than money." Karga didn't know what to say to that. She stood, water dripping from her hands, and studied this strange human who had just upended her entire existence. He was young, maybe 25 or 26. His hands were calloused from work, and there were old scars on his forearms that suggested he knew one end of a weapon from another. But his eyes were kind. Actually kind, not the fake kindness that preceded cruelty. "Your farm," she said carefully. "You said you need workers. I could use help," Simon admitted. "It's just me and it's a lot of land, but I meant what I said. You don't owe me anything. If you want to stay, we'll figure out fair wages. If you want to leave tomorrow or next week or whenever you can. No chains, no collar, ever." The last word came out with surprising intensity. Karga found herself believing him, which was terrifying in its own way. Hope was dangerous. "Hope could be crushed. I will work," she said finally. "For now, we will see how it goes." "Fair enough." Simon started walking again and Karga fell into step beside him. "Farm's just over the next hill. It's not much, but it's home." The farm turned out to be more than not much. It was a solid piece of land with fields of wheat nearly ready for harvest, a vegetable garden that looked well tended, a sturdy barn, and a small but well-maintained house. A horse and 2 cows looked up curiously as they approached. Chickens scattered from their path, clucking indignantly. "My father built most of this," Simon said, pride evident in his voice despite his earlier words. "I've been trying to keep it up, expand where I can. It's been challenging doing it alone." He led her to the barn first, showing her where tools were kept, where the animals slept, the layout of everything. Then to the house. It was a single story with a main room that served as kitchen and living area, and 2 smaller rooms off to the side. "Bedrooms there," Simon said, pointing to one. "Storage there, you can take the bedroom, I'll sleep out here." "What? No," Karga shook her head firmly. "I will not take your bed, I can sleep in the barn." "You're not sleeping in the barn," Simon's voice was gentle but firm. "You're a person, not livestock. The bed's yours. I've got blankets and a perfectly good floor, I'll be fine." "That is not Karga." He looked at her directly. "Please, let me do this. Let me prove that I mean what I said." She wanted to argue more, but exhaustion was catching up with her. The emotional upheaval of the day, the walk, the constant tension of the last 3 years, it all crashed down at once. "All right," she whispered. "For tonight," Simon smiled. "For as many nights as you want. Now let me get that salve." He rummaged in a cabinet and produced a small clay pot. "This might sting at first, but it'll help." "May I?" Karga nodded warily. She sat at the rough wooden table while Simon carefully applied the salve to her neck. His touch was impossibly gentle, mindful of every raw spot. No one had touched her with kindness in 3 years. She felt her eyes begin to water and blinked furiously, refusing to let the tears fall. "There," Simon said, stepping back. "That should help. Are you hungry? I've got bread, cheese, some dried meat, not fancy but filling." Yes, thank you." He put together a simple meal, and they ate in somewhat awkward silence. Karga found herself stealing glances at him, trying to understand what kind of man would do what he had done. Simon seemed content to let her process things at her own pace, not pushing for conversation. Finally, as the sun began to set, he showed her to the bedroom. It was simple, a bed with clean sheets, a chest for clothes, a small window with actual glass. To Karga, who had been sleeping on stone floors or dirt for 3 years, it looked impossibly luxurious. "Sleep well," Simon said. "No work tomorrow. You should rest, let yourself adjust. We can talk about everything else after you've had time to recover." "Simon," Karga said as he turned to leave, "why do you trust me? I could kill you in your sleep. I am stronger than you. Everyone in that market said I was dangerous." He paused in the doorway, considering. "Do you want to kill me? No. Then I guess I don't have anything to worry about." He offered another small smile. "Besides, trust has to start somewhere. Might as well be here." He closed the door softly, leaving Karga alone with her thoughts and a real bed for the first time in years. She sat on the edge of it, testing the mattress, still half convinced this was all some elaborate dream or cruel trick. But the bed was real. The salve on her neck was real. The absence of the collar's weight was real. Karga lay down slowly, staring at the wooden ceiling. Tomorrow she could think about the future, about what came next, about whether staying here was wise or foolish. Tonight she would just let herself rest. She was asleep within minutes, and for the first time in 3 years, she didn't dream of chains. Morning came with the sound of a rooster crowing and the smell of something cooking. Karga woke disoriented, her hand flying to her neck, expecting to feel iron and finding only bandaged skin. The events of yesterday crashed back over her and she sat up quickly, heart pounding. The bedroom door was still closed. No one had come in during the night. She was safe. She stood carefully, every muscle in her body protesting. Years of hard labor without adequate rest had taken their toll. She found a basin of clean water by the door. Simon must have left it there while she slept and used it to wash her face and hands. Then she ventured out into the main room. Simon was at the stove, cooking eggs and what looked like porridge. He glanced up when she entered and nodded a greeting. "Morning, hope you slept well. Breakfast is almost ready." "You did not have to cook for me," Karga said uncertainly. "I was cooking anyway. Sit down." She sat, feeling strange and off balance. Masters didn't cook for slaves. But she wasn't a slave anymore, was she? The thought still didn't feel real. Simon set a plate in front of her with generous portions of food, then settled across the table with his own. "So," he said between bites, "I've been thinking. You said you'd work and I could definitely use the help. But I want to make sure we're on the same page about what that means." "All right. First, wages. Standard farm worker rate is about 2 silver a week, plus room and board. I'll match that starting from yesterday." Karga nearly dropped her fork. That is too much." "That's the going rate," Simon said firmly. "And since you'll be doing work that would normally require 2 people, you've earned it. Second, hours. We'll work sunrise to sunset during harvest season but with breaks. And you get 1 full day off each week. Your choice which day. A day off." Karga said the words like they were in a foreign language. "Everyone needs rest." Simon took a drink of water. "Third, and most important, if you're uncomfortable with anything, if I ask you to do something you don't want to do, you say no. No consequences, no punishment, no questions asked." "Your voice matters here." Karga stared at him. "You are serious, completely?" "I have never heard of a human treating an orc this way." Simon's expression grew more somber. "Yeah, well, most humans are taught that orcs aren't worth treating decently. I'm trying to be better than that." He paused. "Look, I know this is all overwhelming, and I know you have no reason to trust me beyond what I did yesterday, but I'm hoping over time I can prove that I mean what I say." "Fair, fair," Karga echoed. She took another bite of eggs, which were seasoned with herbs and actually tasted good. "What do you need me to do first?" "Honestly, rest. But if you're determined to work, I could use help checking the wheat. We need to make sure it's ready for harvest. Watch for any blight or pests." "Easy work, just walking the fields." "I can do that." They finished breakfast and Simon showed her to the wheat fields. The crop was tall and golden, swaying in the gentle morning breeze. He explained what to look for: signs of disease, insect damage, areas where the grain wasn't developing properly. Then he left her to it, heading off to work on repairing a section of fence that had been damaged. Karga moved through the rows methodically, using skills she'd learned the hard way over the past 3 years. Despite the cruelty of her masters, she'd picked up a lot about farming. The wheat looked healthy overall, with just a few spots that needed attention. She made mental notes and continued her inspection. The sun climbed higher, and sweat began to run down her back. She was used to this, to the physical strain of labor under the hot sun. What she wasn't used to was the absence of fear. No one was standing over her with a whip. No one was shouting insults or threats. She was just working. Around midday, Simon appeared with a water skin and what looked like sandwiches wrapped in cloth. "Break time," he announced. "There's shade by that tree." They sat in the shade and Karga drank deeply from the water skin. The sandwiches were simple bread, cheese, and some kind of preserved meat, but filling. "Fields look good," she reported. "There are 3 small areas with some rust fungus, but it has not spread much. If we treat them soon, it should be fine." Simon nodded, looking pleased. "Good eye. I've got sulfur powder in the barn. We can handle that this afternoon." "You know farming well," Karga observed. "Your father taught you." "He did. From the time I could walk, pretty much." Simon's expression grew distant. "He was hard, my father, demanding, but he knew his craft." "I'll give him that. You sound like you did not like him much." "I loved him," Simon said quietly. "But I didn't like who he was, especially toward the end. The hate in him, it ate away at everything good." He shook his head. "Sorry, that's probably more than you wanted to know." "No," Karga said. "I understand. My father was also difficult. He wanted me to be a perfect orc warrior, fierce and ruthless. I was never quite fierce enough for him." "Is he?" "I do not know. When the humans raided our camp, everything was chaos. I was captured. I do not know who lived or died." The words came out flat, emotionless. Karga had learned not to think too hard about that night. "I'm sorry," Simon said, and he sounded like he meant it. "For what my people did to yours, for all of it." Karga looked at him in surprise. "You do not have to apologize. You did not lead the raid." "No, but I'm part of the society that ordered it, that benefits from it. That makes me complicit, even if I didn't personally wield a sword." He met her eyes. "So I'm sorry. And I know that doesn't fix anything, but I want you to hear it anyway." Something in Karga's chest tightened. She looked away, blinking hard. "Thank you." They finished their lunch in more comfortable silence, then got back to work. The afternoon passed in a blur of activity, treating the fungus spots, checking the vegetable garden, tending to the animals. Simon worked alongside her, never asking her to do anything he wouldn't do himself. When evening came, he cooked another meal and they ate while discussing plans for the next day. This became their routine. Days blended into weeks, and slowly, carefully, Karga began to relax. Simon was consistent, kind without being condescending, firm about safety rules but never cruel, always respectful of her space and her voice. He paid her the promised wages every week, and when she tried to refuse the first payment, insisting she hadn't earned it yet, he absolutely would not hear of it. "You've been working harder than any hired hand I could have gotten," he said firmly. "You earned every copper." The wheat harvest came, and they worked from dawn until well after dark for 3 straight weeks, bringing in the crop. It was back-breaking labor, but having someone to share the load made all the difference. Simon taught Karga the proper techniques for cutting and bundling, for loading the wagon, for storing the grain. In turn, Karga's orcish strength proved invaluable for the heaviest tasks. One evening, after an especially long day, they sat on the porch of the house, too exhausted to do more than watch the stars come out. Simon had broken out a bottle of apple cider he'd been saving, and they passed it back and forth. "You know," Simon said thoughtfully, "I don't think I could have brought in that harvest alone, not without losing a good portion of it. You saved this farm's profits for the year." Karga took a swig of cider. It was sweet and strong, warming her from the inside. "You gave me my freedom. I think we are even." "I don't know that those 2 things are equivalent," Simon said dryly, "but I appreciate the sentiment. Can I ask you something?" Karga had been wondering about this for weeks. "Sure." "That day in the market, you said you had been planning for 2 months. But you also blackmailed Hendrik with that thing about the road taxes. Was that true?" Simon's lips quirked in what might have been amusement. "Yes and no. I'd heard rumors about Hendrik collecting tolls from travelers, never confirmed it. But I gambled that the threat of investigation would be enough to make him back down, even if there was no actual evidence." "You bluffed." "I bluffed," Simon agreed. "And it worked. though I suspect the magistrate will be keeping a closer eye on him now, so maybe it wasn't entirely a bluff." Karga laughed, surprising herself. It was the first time she'd laughed in. She couldn't remember how long. The sound felt rusty, unpracticed, but genuine. Simon smiled at the sound. "It's good to hear you laugh. I do not do it much. Maybe you should do it more." "Maybe I will," Karga said, and was surprised to realize she meant it. As autumn deepened, the dynamic between them continued to shift in subtle ways. Karga found herself lingering over breakfast, enjoying their morning conversations. Simon started asking her opinion on farm decisions, genuinely listening to her input. They developed an easy rhythm of work and rest, pushing each other but also knowing when to call it a day. One afternoon, they were in the barn repairing tack when Simon suddenly asked, "Do you ever think about trying to find your clan?" The question caught Karga off guard. She'd been trying not to think about it. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but I do not know where they would be now. And I do not know if they would welcome me back." "Why wouldn't they?" Karga set down the harness she'd been working on. "Because I was captured. Because I survived. In orc culture, that is. Complicated. Some would say I should have died fighting rather than been enslaved. That by surviving I brought shame to my family. That's harsh. That is the way of my people." Karga's voice was matter-of-fact. "Strength is everything. Showing weakness is unacceptable, and I showed weakness by being captured." Simon was quiet for a moment, his hand stilling on the leather he'd been working. "I don't think surviving makes you weak," he finally said. "I think it makes you strong. You endured 3 years of hell and came out the other side still yourself. That takes incredible courage. You do not understand orc ways. Maybe not. But I understand that any culture that values death over survival is missing something important." He looked at her directly. "You're strong, Karga, in ways that have nothing to do with how much you can lift or how hard you can fight." Karga felt heat rise in her cheeks, a strange sensation she wasn't used to. She looked away, unsure how to respond to that kind of earnest praise. "You are too kind to me." "I'm exactly as kind as you deserve," Simon countered, "which is very." The moment stretched between them, charged with something Karga couldn't quite name. Then a crash from outside made them both jump. They rushed out to find that one of the cows had gotten loose and knocked over a water trough. "Oh, for the love of Bessie, seriously," Simon groaned. "Third time this week." Karga couldn't help it, she started laughing. Simon shot her a look of mock offense, which only made her laugh harder. Soon he was laughing too, and they spent the next hour chasing the recalcitrant cow around the yard, shouting increasingly ridiculous threats that they both knew they'd never follow through on. When Bessie was finally secured and the trough righted, they collapsed against the barn wall, both grinning like idiots. "I think that cow hates me," Simon said. "I think that cow is smarter than both of us," Karga replied. "Probably." Simon wiped sweat from his forehead. "You know, this is the most fun I've had in years." Karga realized with some surprise that she felt the same way. When had that happened? When had this place stopped being just a temporary refuge and started feeling like something more? Winter arrived with the first snow in late October, earlier than expected. Simon had been preparing, making sure they had enough firewood, that the animals were secured, that the house was properly insulated. But Karga still wasn't prepared for how beautiful it all looked, the fields covered in white, the trees frosted with ice, the world gone quiet and peaceful. She stood on the porch one morning, watching the snow fall, and felt Simon come up beside her. "Pretty, isn't it?" he said softly. "Yes." Karga pulled her coat, Simon's old coat, really, but he'd given it to her tighter around herself. "We do not get much snow in the mountains where I am from. It is too dry." "You miss it, the mountains." "Sometimes, But less than I thought I would, she glanced at him. This place, your farm. It has become familiar. I'm glad. Simon was quiet for a moment. Karga, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. Her stomach clenched. This was it, wasn't it? He was going to tell her it was time to move on, that he couldn't afford to keep paying her over the winter, that she needed to leave. All right. I know I said you could leave whenever you wanted, and that's still true, but I want you to know. If you want to stay, really stay, this could be your home, not just a place you're working. Home. Karga turned to look at him fully. What do you mean? Simon met her eyes, and she saw something vulnerable there, something uncertain. I mean, I'd like you to stay. Permanently. As a partner in this farm, not just a worker. We split the profits, we make decisions together, we build something together. Why? The word came out sharper than she intended. Why would you offer that to me? Because you've worked harder than anyone I've ever known. Because you've made this place better. Because I trust you. Because... He hesitated, then pushed forward. Because I like having you here. More than I probably should. You make me laugh. You challenge me. You see the world differently than I do, and that makes me think, makes me better. I don't want this to be temporary. I want you to stay. Karga's heart was doing strange things in her chest. You are offering to make me your business partner. Yes. Because you trust me and respect my work. Yes. And because I care about you as a person. As a friend. Maybe. Maybe as more than a friend if you were interested in that. But even if not, I still want you to stay. The confession hung between them. Karga's mind raced. More than a friend. He was saying he had feelings for her. A human man had feelings for an orc woman. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was everything society said couldn't and shouldn't happen. And yet, standing there in the snow with Simon looking at her with those storm-gray eyes full of hope and fear and honesty, Karga realized something. She had feelings for him too. Somewhere between breaking the collar and chasing the cow, between harvest and winter, between every small kindness and shared laugh, she'd fallen for this strange, stubborn, compassionate human man. I do not know what to say, she whispered. Say you'll think about it, Simon said. You don't have to decide anything now, just think about it. All right, I will think about it. But Karga already knew her answer. She just needed to find the courage to say it out loud. That courage came 3 days later during a particularly fierce snowstorm. They'd been cooped up inside for hours, playing cards and talking to pass the time. The conversation had drifted to childhood memories, and Simon was telling a story about the time he'd accidentally let all his father's chickens loose right before a holiday feast. So there I am, 8 years old, chasing chickens through the village square, and my father is behind me, shouting threats that probably violated several laws, Simon said, grinning at the memory. I caught exactly 0 chickens. Fortunately, the neighbors took pity on us and helped round them up. Karga was laughing, truly laughing, and suddenly the words just came out. I want to stay. Simon's story cut off mid-sentence. What? You asked if I would stay. I want to, as your partner, as... She took a breath. As more than a friend, if that offer is still open. For a moment, Simon just stared at her. Then his face broke into the biggest smile she'd ever seen from him. Really, really. I care about you, Simon, more than I should, probably, more than is wise, but I do, and I want to see where this can go. Simon stood up so fast his chair nearly toppled over. He crossed to where she sat in 2 long strides, then seemed to catch himself. Can I? Is it all right if I hug you? In answer, Karga stood and pulled him into her arms. He wrapped his arms around her waist, and they stood there in the middle of the cabin, holding each other while the storm raged outside. Karga was taller than him by a few inches, broader in the shoulders, stronger by far. But somehow in his arms she felt delicate, precious. I never thought this could happen, Simon murmured against her shoulder. I never thought I'd find someone who understood me like you do. I never thought I would be free again, Karga replied. Let alone happy. You gave me both. Simon pulled back enough to look up at her. We gave each other both. This works because we're both choosing it, together. Then, very carefully, he leaned up and kissed her. It was gentle, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away if she wanted, but Karga didn't want to pull away. She kissed him back, one hand coming up to cup his face, marveling at the softness of his skin compared to her own rougher hide. When they finally broke apart, both breathing a little harder, Simon was grinning like an idiot again. So, partners then, in everything, Karga agreed. The storm passed and life continued. But something fundamental had shifted. They were together now, truly together, and neither of them felt the need to hide it. Simon moved into the bedroom with Karga, and they spent the long winter nights talking, planning, dreaming about the future. Not everyone was accepting of their relationship. When they went to market together the following spring, holding hands openly, they received stares and whispers. A few people made comments loud enough to be heard. Simon's jaw would tighten, and Karga could feel the anger radiating off him, but he never let go of her hand. One incident nearly turned violent. A drunk man outside the tavern shouted something crude about orc women, and Simon wheeled on him with fire in his eyes. Say that again, Simon said, his voice dangerously quiet. You heard me, the drunk slurred. Everyone knows what orcs are good for, and it ain't farming. He didn't get to finish because Simon punched him. Once clean and hard, right in the jaw. The man went down in a heap. Anyone else have comments? Simon asked the small crowd that had gathered. His knuckles were bleeding, but he didn't seem to notice. Because I'm happy to discuss them. No one said anything. The magistrate appeared, took one look at the situation, and sighed. Stenwick, you can't just go around punching people. He insulted Karga, I heard, and between you and me he deserved it, but I still have to maintain order. The magistrate looked at Karga. You all right, miss? The title miss, not it or orc or any of the slurs she'd grown accustomed to, made Karga stand a little straighter. I am fine, thank you. Good. Stenwick, help me get this fool somewhere he can sleep it off, then get your hand looked at, and try not to make a habit of this. No promises, Simon muttered, but he helped haul the drunk to the town's small jail cell. Later, as Karga bandaged Simon's hand back at the farm, she shook her head. You did not have to do that. I have heard worse. I know, but you shouldn't have to hear it. And I'm tired of people thinking they can say whatever they want without consequences. He flexed his fingers, wincing. Though I probably should have used my left hand, need my right for farm work. You are an idiot, Karga said, but there was affection in her voice. You're idiot, though. Yes. My idiot. Spring turned to summer and they planted crops together, worked the land together, built their life together. Karga found herself smiling more, worrying less. The nightmares that had plagued her for years, dreams of the raid, the collar, the beatings, came less frequently. In their place were dreams of the future, of the farm thriving, of a life she'd never imagined she could have. One evening in early summer, they were sitting on the porch after dinner, watching fireflies dance in the twilight. Simon had been unusually quiet all day, and Karga could tell he had something on his mind. What is it? She finally asked. I've been thinking, Simon said slowly, about us, about the future. Karga's stomach clenched. All right. I want to make this official. Not just partners in the farm, but partners in life. He took a breath. I want to marry you, Karga, if you'll have me. Karga felt like all the air had left her lungs. Marry. I know it's complicated. I know there will be people who have problems with it, but I don't care. I love you. I want to spend my life with you. I want everyone to know that we're together, that you're my wife and I'm your husband. He turned to look at her directly. Will you marry me? The word yes was on Karga's tongue immediately, but something held her back. Simon, do you understand what you are asking? A marriage between a human and an orc. That is not just unusual, it is unheard of. People will not accept it. They might refuse to recognize it. Your neighbors, your community, you could lose everything. I don't care. You should care. This farm, your reputation, your standing in the community, I don't care. Simon took her hands in his. Karga, you are the best thing that has ever happened to me. You make me better. You make me happy. You make me want to be the person I always wished I could be. I would give up this farm, this town, everything before I'd give you up. So yes, I understand what I'm asking, and I'm still asking. Will you marry me? Karga looked at him, this stubborn, kind, foolish, wonderful man, and felt her defenses crumble. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. Simon's whoop of joy sent the chickens scattering in alarm. He stood up, pulling Karga with him, and spun her around despite the considerable difference in their sizes. When he set her down, they were both laughing and crying at the same time. I don't have a ring, Simon said. I should have gotten a ring. That's what you're supposed to do, right? I do not need a ring. But I want you to have one. Something to show the world that you're taken, that you chose me and I chose you. He thought for a moment. I have my mother's ring. It was the only thing of hers that survived when she died. Would that be all right? Or would you rather I got you something new? Your mother's ring would be an honor, Karga said softly. Simon went inside and returned a few minutes later with a simple gold band set with a small green stone. It was her wedding ring. My father gave it to me before he died, said I should give it to someone worthy. He slipped it onto Karga's finger. It was a little loose, but it fit well enough. I think you're the most worthy person I've ever met. Karga looked at the ring, then at Simon, then back at the ring. She'd never worn jewelry before, never imagined she would, but this small band of gold felt right, like it belonged there. When? She asked. Whenever you want. Tomorrow, next month, next year, I'll wait as long as you need. Soon, Karga decided, before I lose my courage, before something happens to change this. Nothing's going to change this, Simon promised, but soon is good. I'll talk to the magistrate tomorrow, see what we need to do. The magistrate, when approached, was less than enthusiastic. Stenwick, I don't know if this is legal, he said, rubbing his temples. I've never dealt with a marriage between different species before. I'm not sure my authority covers this. Then who would have authority? Simon asked. I don't know, maybe the territorial governor or the crown. This is unprecedented. So make a precedent, Simon said firmly. You're the legal authority in this district. If you say it's valid, it's valid. The magistrate looked at Karga, who had insisted on coming to this meeting. And you want this. You understand that if people challenge this marriage, it could end up in the territorial courts. You could face legal battles, social ostracism, worse. I understand, Karga said, and I still want it. The old man sighed. You're both adults. You're both of sound mind as far as I can tell. And while I think you're both crazy, I can't find a legal reason to deny this. He pulled out paper and began writing. I'll perform the ceremony in my office with 2 witnesses as required by law. When do you want to do this? Tomorrow, Simon said. At the same time, Karga said, as soon as possible. The magistrate looked between them and laughed. Young love, fine. Tomorrow at noon, find 2 witnesses, and Stenwick, I hope you know what you're doing. I do, Simon said confidently. Finding witnesses proved surprisingly easy. Simon asked the blacksmith, an older man named Thomas who had always been fair to them both. Thomas agreed without hesitation. About time someone shook things up around here, he said with a grin. I'll be there. Karga asked the butcher's wife, a practical woman named Mary who had never treated her as less than human. Mary's eyes actually got misty when she heard the request. It would be an honor, she said. You two are good for each other. Anyone with eyes can see it. The ceremony the next day was simple. Karga wore the best dress she owned, which wasn't saying much, as she only owned two. Simon wore his father's old Sunday clothes, cleaned and pressed. They stood in the magistrate's office with Thomas and Mary as witnesses, and the magistrate read the traditional words. When it came time for vows, Simon spoke first. I, Simon Stenwick, take you, Karga, to be my wife. I promise to love you, respect you, and stand by you through whatever comes. I promise to see you as you are strong, kind, courageous, and worthy of everything good in this world. I promise to build a life with you that honors us both. Then it was Karga's turn. She'd thought about what to say all night. I, Karga, take you, Simon Stenwick, to be my husband. I promise to love you with all that I am. I promise to work beside you, to support you, to challenge you when you need it, and comfort you always. You gave me freedom and then gave me a home. You gave me hope when I had none. I promise to spend my life proving worthy of those gifts. There were tears on Mary's face, and even Thomas had to clear his throat roughly. The magistrate himself looked moved. By the authority vested in me by the territorial charter, I declare you married, he said. May you find happiness together. Simon kissed his wife. There in the magistrate's office, and Karga kissed him back, not caring who saw or what they thought. They were married. They were together. Nothing else mattered. The newlyweds celebrated quietly that evening back at the farm, sharing a special meal that Simon had prepared. He'd even managed to acquire a small cake from the baker, though Karga suspected Mary had helped with that. To us, Simon said, raising a glass of wine. To us, Karga echoed. To the future. To proving everyone wrong. Karga laughed. Yes, to that too. They spent their wedding night in the little farmhouse that had become their home, and for the first time in her life, Karga felt completely at peace. She was loved. She was chosen. She was free. News of the marriage spread quickly through the region, as news tends to do in small communities. Reactions were mixed. Some people refused to acknowledge it, insisting it wasn't real. Others were openly hostile, with a few even suggesting that Simon had been enchanted or coerced. But there were also quiet voices of support, people who stopped by the farm with small gifts or words of encouragement, people who simply treated them as any other married couple. The real test came about a month after the wedding, when a group of men rode up to the farm. They wore the insignia of the territorial militia, and their leader was a hard-faced man who introduced himself as Captain Roderick. Simon Stenwick, he asked. That's me. Simon stepped forward, putting himself slightly in front of Karga. She wanted to protest. She was the stronger fighter, after all, but she understood the gesture. I'm here on behalf of the territorial government. We've received complaints about your marriage. What kind of complaints? The kind that question whether such a union is legal or even possible. I've been sent to investigate. Simon's jaw tightened. Investigation, right. You mean you're here to intimidate us into annulling it? I'm here to assess the situation, Captain Roderick said neutrally. May I speak with your wife? You're speaking to both of us, Simon said firmly. We're partners in everything. What you have to say to one, you can say to both. The captain's eyes flicked to Karga, and she forced herself to meet his gaze steadily. Very well. Is it true that you were a slave before marrying Simon Stenwick? It is true, Karga said clearly. He purchased me and freed me. Then months later we chose to marry. And you claim this was your choice, not coercion. It was my choice. Karga heard her voice grow stronger. He gave me freedom and asked nothing in return. He treated me with respect when no one else would. He offered me partnership and love. I chose to accept. If anyone has been coerced in this relationship, it is him, putting up with my stubborn orc ways. That got a small quirk of the captain's lips quickly suppressed. And you, Stenwick, you understand that marrying outside your species is controversial. I understand that small minds can't accept that love doesn't care about species or tradition, or what society thinks it should look like, Simon said. But I also understand that my marriage is legal. The magistrate of this district performed the ceremony and filed the proper documents. If you want to challenge it, you'll have to take it up with him and probably the territorial courts. Captain Roderick was silent for a long moment, his eyes moving between them. Then he sighed. Off the record. I don't personally care who you marry. I've seen enough killing between humans and orcs to last several lifetimes. If you two can find happiness together, maybe there's hope for the rest of us. He lowered his voice. But on the record, I have to report back that I found a legally married couple living peacefully on their farm, causing no problems. And unless someone wants to challenge that in court, which would be expensive and time-consuming with no guarantee of success, I suggest people leave you alone. Simon's posture relaxed slightly. Thank you, Captain. Don't thank me yet. There will be others who aren't as understanding. Watch your backs. He nodded to them both and led his men away. After they left, Karga let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That could have been much worse. It could have, Simon agreed, but it wasn't. And every day we stay together, every day we prove this can work, it gets a little easier. He was right. Over the following months and then years, the hostility gradually lessened. Some people would never accept their marriage, but others came around, especially as they saw how well the farm prospered and how genuinely happy Simon and Karga were. They became known as reliable, hard-working, fair in their dealings. Slowly, grudgingly, they earned a degree of acceptance. More importantly, they built a life together. A good life. They expanded the farm, buying an adjacent plot of land. They took in a stray dog who became their faithful companion. They helped their neighbors during hard times and received help in turn. They laughed together, worked together, planned together. 2 years into their marriage, Karga realized she was pregnant. The revelation came when she'd been feeling tired and queasy for weeks. At first, she'd thought it was just a sickness, but when it persisted, Mary suggested she might be with child. The possibility had never occurred to Karga. She'd assumed that humans and orcs couldn't have children together. "Are you sure?" she asked Mary for the 3rd time. "As sure as I can be without a healer confirming it. But yes, dear, I think you're pregnant, about 3 months along if I had to guess." Karga sat down heavily. A child. She was going to have a child. She and Simon were going to be parents. Simon's reaction when she told him was extensive. First he was shocked, then overjoyed, then terrified, then back to overjoyed. "We're having a baby," he kept saying, as if repetition would make it more real. "A baby, our baby." "You are happy?" Karga asked, needing to hear him say it. "Happy, Karga, I'm beyond happy. I don't even have words." He pulled her into his arms. "We're going to be parents. We're going to have a family. Everything I never dared dream about is coming true." "I am scared," Karga admitted. "I do not know if I will be a good mother, and the child, it will be half human, half orc." "What if people can learn to accept it, just like they learned to accept us?" Simon said firmly. "And if they don't, we'll protect our child. We'll make sure he or she knows they're loved and wanted and perfect exactly as they are." "You make it sound simple." "It won't be simple. But it will be worth it." He placed a hand gently on her stomach. "We'll figure it out, together." The pregnancy was not easy. Karga's body struggled with the mixed heritage of the child, and there were complications that had Mary and the local healer worried. But Karga was strong, and Simon was steadfast by her side through every difficult moment. In late autumn, as the leaves turned gold and red, Karga went into labor. It was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Simon held her hand through it all, whispering encouragement, wiping her forehead, refusing to leave her side no matter how much she insisted he didn't have to stay. Finally, as the sun set on the second day, a baby's cry filled the little farmhouse. "It's a girl," the healer announced, carefully cleaning the infant, "and she's healthy. Small, but healthy." Simon laughed and cried at the same time. Karga just felt exhausted and relieved and overwhelmed. The healer placed the baby in her arms, and Karga looked down at her daughter for the first time. She was beautiful. She had her father's gray eyes and her mother's pointed ears. Her skin was a shade caught between green and tan, a unique color all her own. She had tiny tusks just beginning to form. She was perfect. "Hello, little one," Karga whispered. "I am your mother." The baby blinked up at her, seemingly fascinated by her voice. Simon leaned over Karga's shoulder, one hand gently touching their daughter's tiny fingers. "She's perfect," he breathed. "Absolutely perfect." "Have you thought about a name?" They had discussed names, but nothing had felt quite right. Now, looking at their daughter, Karga knew. "Sira," she said. "Her name is Sira Stenwick." "Sira," Simon repeated, testing it out. "I like it. It's strong, like her mother, and kind, like her father." They sat there together, the three of them, as night fell and the stars came out. Sira would face challenges in her life, Karga knew. People who wouldn't accept her mixed heritage, who would see her as other or strange or wrong. But she would also have parents who loved her fiercely, who would fight for her right to exist and be happy, who would teach her that she was valuable exactly as she was. As Karga held her daughter close, with Simon's arm around her shoulders, she thought back to that day in the market square. The day a farmer broke her collar and changed everything. She'd been so certain then that trust was impossible, that kindness was a trap, that there was no hope for someone like her. How wrong she'd been, and how grateful she was to have been wrong. Years passed, and Sira grew into a bright, energetic child who had her mother's strength and her father's stubbornness. She learned to help on the farm almost as soon as she could walk, following her parents around and asking endless questions about everything. Some of the neighbors' children were cruel, calling her names and refusing to play with her, but others accepted her, and Sira learned early to stand up for herself. When Sira was 5, another child arrived, a son they named Samuel, who had his mother's green skin and his father's smile. 2 years later came another daughter, Sophia, who looked almost entirely human except for her pointed ears and unusual strength. The farmhouse that had once seemed too big for just Simon now rang with the sound of children's laughter. Karga, who had once thought she would die in chains, found herself living a life she'd never imagined, married to a man she loved, mother to 3 beautiful children, owner of a prosperous farm, and respected member of a community that had slowly, reluctantly, learned to accept her family. One summer evening, when Sira was 12, Samuel was 7, and Sophia was 5, the whole family sat on the porch after dinner. The children were playing a game that involved a lot of running and shouting. Simon and Karga watched them with the comfortable contentment of parents whose children were happy and healthy. "You ever regret it?" Karga asked quietly. "Giving up 60 silver to free a slave, marrying someone everyone said you shouldn't, having children who will always be seen as different." Simon looked at her like she'd asked if he regretted breathing. "Not for 1 second, not one. You and our children are the best thing that ever happened to me. You're my whole world. Even when people still whisper about us in town, even then, let them whisper, we have something real here. Something worth more than their approval." He took her hand, thumb brushing over her wedding ring, the same ring he'd given her all those years ago. "You saved me, Karga. I was so alone before you, so angry at the world. You gave me purpose and family and love. If anything, I didn't do enough." I should have broken that collar sooner. You broke it exactly when you were supposed to, Karga said softly. Not a moment too soon or too late, and you have given me more than I ever could have dreamed. A home, freedom, children, love. You gave me a life worth living. Simon leaned over and kissed her, a gentle press of lips that still made her heart flutter even after all these years. I love you, he said simply. I love you too, Karga replied. They're kissing again, Sophia called out, and her siblings laughed. You better get used to it, Simon called back. We're going to keep doing it forever. Forever is a long time, Papa, Sierra said, flopping down on the porch steps. She was at the age where she liked to challenge everything. Exactly, Simon agreed. Forever. That's how long I plan to love your mother. Sierra rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. You are so sappy, guilty as charged. As the evening deepened and the children eventually tired themselves out, they all went inside. Simon herded the kids toward bed while Karga banked the fire and cleaned up. It was an ordinary evening in an ordinary life, and that ordinariness was precious beyond measure. Later, lying in bed with Simon's arm around her waist, Karga stared at the ceiling and thought about everything that had led to this moment. The raid that had destroyed her first life. The years of slavery and suffering. The day in the market square when a stubborn farmer decided that some things were worth more than silver or safety or social acceptance. She thought about all the people who had said it wouldn't work, that they were doomed, that a human and an orc could never truly build a life together. And she thought about how thoroughly they'd proven those people wrong. What are you thinking about? Simon murmured sleepily. How glad I am that you did not ask permission, Karga said. That day in the market, you just broke the collar. You did not wait for approval or consensus. You just did what you knew was right. Best decision I ever made. Yes, Karga agreed. It was. She turned in his arms so she could see his face in the dim light filtering through the window. Even after all these years, she sometimes still couldn't believe this was her life. That this kind, stubborn, wonderful man had chosen her and kept choosing her every day. Thank you, she said softly, for seeing me when I was invisible, for freeing me when I was chained, for loving me when I felt unlovable. Thank you for letting me, Simon replied, for trusting me, for building this life with me, for being exactly who you are. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges tomorrow brought, they would face them together. The years continued to pass, bringing new joys and new challenges. Sierra grew into a strong young woman who inherited her mother's determination and her father's sense of justice. She became an advocate for mixed heritage individuals, traveling to other communities and speaking about acceptance and understanding. Samuel became a scholar, fascinated by history and cultures, working to bridge the gap between human and orc societies. Sophia stayed on the farm, loving the land and the work as much as her parents did. Simon and Karga grew older together, their love deepening with time rather than fading. They expanded the farm into a genuine homestead, eventually employing several workers, both human and orc, and treating all of them with the same fairness and respect that had characterized their relationship from the start. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Simon surprised Karga by having the old Market Square's center post replaced. The new post bore a plaque that read, "In commemoration of freedom granted and love chosen. May all who pass here remember that chains can be broken and hearts can be opened." Karga cried when she saw it, and Simon held her while she did. "You changed everything," he said. "Not just for us, but for everyone who came after. There are 3 other mixed couples in this territory now. People are starting to question the old prejudices. It's slow, but it's happening. And it started that day when I broke your collar." "We changed everything," Karga corrected. "Together." Together, Simon agreed. As they walked back to their farm that evening, hand in hand, Karga reflected on the strange, winding path that had brought her here. If someone had told her, all those years ago when she stood on that auction platform with iron around her neck, that she would one day be happy and loved and free, she would never have believed it. But here she was. Here they were. The farmhouse came into view, smoke rising from the chimney, lights in the windows. Sophia was probably starting dinner. Their grandchildren Sira had married and had 2 children of her own might be visiting. The farm dog would be sleeping by the fire. It was home in every sense of the word. "Race you," Karga said suddenly, feeling playful. Simon laughed. "You're going to win. You always win." "Then you better run fast," Karga said and took off behind her. She heard Simon's laughter and the sound of him chasing after her. They ran across their land, their farm, their home, and Karga felt 20 years fall away. She felt free and young and full of hope. She let Simon catch her just before they reached the house, both of them breathless and grinning. He pulled her into a kiss, and she kissed him back with all the love and gratitude and joy that filled her heart. This was her life. This was her family. This was her freedom. And it had all started with a simple act of courage, a farmer who saw an orc woman in chains and decided that wasn't acceptable. Who broke those chains in front of everyone, consequences be damned. Who offered freedom and then offered love. Who changed everything. Inside the house, their family waited. Outside, the world continued its slow, grudging march toward understanding. And here, in this moment, Simon and Karga stood together under the stars, proof that love could transcend prejudice, that courage could break chains, and that sometimes the most revolutionary act was simply choosing to see another person's humanity, even when society said that person wasn't human at all. "I love you," Karga whispered. "I love you too," Simon replied. "Always have, always will." And that, more than anything else, was the truth that mattered. They went inside together, into the warmth and light and laughter of their home. The door closed behind them, shutting out the darkness, keeping in the love. And in the morning, they would wake up and do it all again, work the land, raise their family, love each other, and continue proving that the impossible was entirely possible after all. The story of the farmer who broke the orc slave's collar without asking permission became a legend in the territory. It was told and retold, growing in the telling, inspiring others to question the old hatreds and prejudices. And at the heart of that story always were 2 people who chose love over fear, courage over conformity, and each other over everything else. It wasn't always easy. There were still people who disapproved, still moments of discrimination and hardship. But Simon and Karga faced them together, with their children beside them and their community slowly, gradually learning to stand with them rather than against them. In the end, that was what mattered. Not the grand gestures or the dramatic moments, but the everyday choice to love and be loved. The choice to see each other fully and choose each other anyway. The choice to build something beautiful out of broken pieces. And it all started in a market square, with a collar breaking and falling away, with freedom granted and hope rekindled. With a farmer who didn't ask permission, and an orc woman who learned to trust again, with love that changed everything.